Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies. Hello, initiates of the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot over the last 7 weeks digging into our Chemtrails on Trial series. Today, though, we have a special treat. And not only for you, but for us too. In fact, when we confirmed this interview, my message to Neil was, I got the Holy Grail. And he knew exactly what I meant. Now, full disclosure before we start. Now, you all know my past, so it should be no shock to you that I once believed this guest was what I considered an enemy. I thought his job was to make me and the truth movement look stupid. But in all fairness, I was probably doing a good enough job of that myself. I have since come to admire him, and am consistently impressed with his books, documentaries, films, and now his podcast, Things Fell Apart. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome, Jon Ronson.
Hey, you guys. Thank you for having me. It's going to be fascinating talking to you, in part because the journey you've been on, the trajectory from believer to skeptic, is pretty rare. Like, I've met a few people who've had that arc. Not many. Most people double down and triple down and get trapped and stuck. Yeah. So I'd be curious, at some point during this conversation to talk to you about, the moment everything changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are you feeling?
Well, I'm okay. I got COVID about 3 weeks ago, and it wasn't that bad. But just as it was leaving my body, like 2 weeks later, I got a blood clot in my lungs.
Oh, God.
And I was like rushed to hospital in an ambulance. And I'm okay now, but it's taking a little while to get completely better.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, oh dear. Well, if you need, if a break or anything like that, please do let us know. But where are you living at the moment? You're in upstate New York, aren't you?
Yeah, right now I'm in upstate New York. We've also got a little place in the city, so I kind of bounce between one and the other, which is delightful. So yeah, all is good. Where are you two? Are you in London or where?
Brent's in Bristol. I'm in Nottingham.
Okay.
So yeah, right in the middle, basically. But I've been to New York, but it was years ago. It was absolutely years ago. I was about 15 at the time, so I actually got to go up the Twin Towers.
Right.
So that gives you an idea of how long ago it was. So
yeah,
it's crackers though, New York. It's such a vibrant city. Like it just doesn't stop, does it?
It's just wonderful. The weekend before 9/11 was my first trip to do the projects which eventually turned into The Men Who Stare at Goats. Although at the time,
right.
Yeah, at the time we really didn't know quite what. Well, cool. At the time we didn't really know what we were doing. It was very speculative. But I remember so clearly, like I was at the Tribeca Grand Hotel, and my view was just a panorama of the Twin Towers. And I remember phoning my wife and saying, God, you wouldn't believe, I've got this amazing view of the Twin Towers. And then I got out of the elevator, and Graham Norton was there. So I knew a little bit. And
well, there's no coincidences.
Right, yeah. And so we went out for a drink. And what I remember, more than anything of that night was Graham Norton kind of whispering to me, we lived charmed lives. And then 3 days later, 9/11 happened, and everything changed. Yeah.
At that point, were you still in touch with Alex Jones?
Well, he didn't like them.
Did he not?
I don't think he hated it. I don't think he loved it. I mean, basically, I was challenging him because, we both went into Bohemian Grove together.
Mm-hmm.
We came out, and Alex brought out his documentary, Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove, where he said that what we'd witnessed was quite possibly an actual human sacrifice, which put me in this very awkward position of like having to go around like answering that. And by kind of basically defending the Bush family's right to have a mock human sacrifice, which put me in a sort of strange situation. But I'd say to Alex, like, that the phrase in Judaism, diano, which means like, isn't that sufficient or that is sufficient? And when I said to Alex, it's like what we really saw at Bohemian Grove was so nuts, so interesting, like so complicated, so mysterious. Why do you want to add a layer of fiction to it? Why do you want to pretend that we saw something that we didn't?
Yeah.
Which is very frustrating to me. Like, what actually goes on at Bohemian Grove is fascinating. So why Alex wanted to say, well, maybe we witnessed an actual human sacrifice too. Like, what's the point of that? So anyway, so I think at that point we'd kind of fallen out. But then when the Ministerial Goats came out, Alex liked that more. I mean, that's
did he?
I mean, that's the thing that I've done that's most attractive to conspiracy theorists, I'd say. Because it is about, true, odd, secret goings on in high places. So then after the Ministerial Goats came out, Alex had me on InfoWars. So I was on InfoWars in about 2004 in a kind of positive way. And then I lost touch with Alex for years and years and years, right through till 2016.
Were you in touch with him when obviously you kind of exposed his origin story? Because Alex had obviously told everybody that he was trying to be recruited into the Illuminati and exposed this drug ring at the school that was being perpetuated by the local police, and that he had to move away because all these hot women just kept throwing themselves at him and he was going to become turned to Satanism. That wasn't strictly accurate, was it, Jon?
No, it wasn't. So this is what happened. So in the intervening years, especially when Alex got more nefarious around, I guess, 2016, 2017, with all the Sandy Hook, stuff. And people started criticizing me for, kind of being his Simon Cowell,
Oh, right.
kind of discovering him in a way when we snuck into Bohemian Grove together. That was the first big story about him. So I would push back against that a little bit. But at the same time, it sort of crossed my mind that, my one Alex Jones story out there is a story that's, pretty gentle about him, really. So that was on my mind, is the karmic balance slightly off? So then what happened was cut to 2016. Well, cut to 2015 and I'm at the gym and Trump's on the TV and somebody shouts out to Trump, "Are you going back on the Alex Jones show?" And Trump said, "Alex Jones, good guy." And I just, honestly, I nearly fell off the elliptical. In fact, I had no idea that Alex had reached a place in life where Trump might go on his show. I just didn't realize, I'd lost touch. So then in 2016, I went to the Republican convention, really to kind of try and rekindle my relationship with Alex, because suddenly Alex was involved in, serious politics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when I was there, this guy called Josh came up to me, and Josh was one of Alex's, camera team.
Oh yeah.
And, and I could tell that things were on Josh's mind. Right. And that he kind of wanted to spend more time with me than with Alex. I think, Josh had gone through a similar trajectory to you guys, and I'd be curious to, talk to you at some point during this conversation about that.
Of course.
Yeah. So Josh, had been a big Alex Jones fan, had worked at InfoWars for about 4 years, and then became, disenchanted by what he was saying, and wanted to be a kind of whistleblower.
Okay.
So me and Josh then met, I think it was the day of the inauguration, at a hotel in Washington, D.C. And I didn't know what it was that Josh wanted to tell me. Yeah. But, and it was nothing huge. But what he did end up telling me was this story. He said that people around the office know this, but nobody else knows this. And it's that when Alex was a child, he was a bully. He was the worst bully at school. And eventually, the kids he bullied all got together and lured him to a party at a barn where they beat him almost to death. And it's the real reason why he left Dallas and moved to Austin. Nothing to do with exposing police corruption, anything like that. It was really because, he'd been, pushed out of town by kids who were just sick of his bullying behavior. So that's why I then did that story. It was a kind of combination of wanting to do another story about Alex, and then this extraordinary story that Josh told me that was so counter to Alex's own origin story.
Mythology, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Did Alex ever tell you his story about how he's on a mission from God?
No, he never really mentioned God to me that much.
Have you not heard this one?
No.
Apparently, he was eating chicken fried steak in a restaurant about 9 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden, everything started vibrating. Now, in some versions of it, he doesn't see a figure. In other versions of it, I think he sees a giant golden eagle, which he takes to be God. Now, apparently, God told him that you're going to have this mission, and you're going to suffer. Basically, you're going to, be sort of persecuted for this, but your job is to bring the truth to the world. And in exchange for this, God downloaded all the knowledge of the world into Alex's head, including the instructions on how a nuclear fission reactor works. Whether he's ever had a chance to
do anything with that.
It's like someday, that's why he's trying to get in with Trump, I think. But anyway, this was his origin story. So apparently he equates himself with a prophet like Jesus, essentially. So
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about police corruption at school, I'm sure there was some element of truth to that. We did a really big deep dive into Alex's school days, and I'm sure some of the police were kind of sketchy, and so on. But far from Alex being a God person, he was a Satan person. He was constantly running up and down the school corridors, yelling "Hail Satan" and smashing his head into lockers. I mean, this was disturbed behavior.
Really?
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Which gave me a sort of moral problem. Like, I wouldn't want anyone to be digging around my life at Cardiff High School. So was it fair for me to dig around his life at Rockwell High School? And I almost didn't do it. And in fact, the sort of moral judgment I came to was if Alex was willing to talk to me as part of the story, then it seemed fair. But also I kind of figured, Alex is a public figure now. Like, if Alex hadn't become so big and so rich with such proximity to power, and then all of the Sandy Hook stuff that was going on, I don't think I would have gone back to his childhood. But all of those things kind of justified it.
Well, his style's very much changed, hasn't it? He's become far more sort of right-wing, or far more overtly right-wing, and far more aggressive, and far more sort of angry and nasty towards people. Do you know what I mean? He used to be sort of rallying against the police state. Now somehow it's shifted to rallying against immigrants and trans people and stuff like this. And it's
absolutely. When I went to Beaming Groves with Alex, at the same time I went to Aryan Nations, and I went to the Ku Klux Klan. And I, firmly put Alex into a different camp to those people. Because, his concerns back then, I can't say I'm encyclopedic. I'm not like the knowledge fight guys who know like everything.
They're so good, yeah.
Yeah. But as far as I could tell, most of the things he was going on about back then were things like Waco and Ruby Ridge and the Oklahoma City bombing. And, frankly, government overreach at Waco and Ruby Ridge are things worthy of scrutiny.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really, particularly opposed to Alex back.
Well, I think that's what, there's no denying that Alex Jones has got a certain rugged charisma. And I think that's what attracted people to him, particularly us at the start, was that he was highlighting, his World Trade Organization and showing sort of infiltrators and, the use of black bloc and stuff like that. It was fascinating. And then he had a shift, didn't he? I don't know about you, but I sort of thought that his shift seemed to coincide with his very expensive divorce.
Right.
Do you think maybe that might have had a play in it?
Well, somebody told me, this is secondhand information, that I was told that possibly around the time of his divorce, I'm not sure of the exact timeline, somebody went up to him, and I can't remember who it was, but it might have been somebody who was related to Superman, Christopher Reeve.
All right.
Yeah, who said, look, what I'm about to say might be partially incorrect, so I apologize. But, somebody said to him, I can make you rich. And the way,
Right.
and Alex wasn't particularly rich at that point. And he said, the way I can make you rich is, sell these supplements, these male vitality. And those things made him incredibly rich. Almost overnight, he went from somebody without much money to somebody with a vast amount of money. At the same time, Trump is paying interest, Roger Stone is paying him interest. And so suddenly he has money and power. And I think his shift might have happened as a result of those things.
There's a guy whose name escapes me. I think it's Morrison. But anyway, he talks about sort of like the sort of manifestations of cults and how this is sort of used in advertising, really. And he says that essentially what a cult offers you is they tell you exactly what the world is like. They tell you what your position in the world is, and they surround you with like-minded people. So say if you're just like, Mercedes cars or whatever, by the nature of your car, you know that you're better than this person, not as good as this person, but you're on that sort of path. And you're surrounded by loads of other people who also think, yeah, you're tip because you've got a Mercedes car. And and that could be applied to hundreds of things, football teams, sports teams, products, political manifestations. But you do see that within conspiracies. Like conspiracies don't just offer the sort of fun of the conspiracy or the puzzle aspect of it. They offer you a community. They offer you a role as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's very interesting, actually. I mean, we're bouncing over all over the place, but particularly in your excellent series, Things Fall Apart, and the idea of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
That really resonated with me.
Same.
Because that's how you position yourself as a conspiracy theorist. Nobody tends to get into these things for bad reasons. They get into it because they want to fight the lizards, or they want to like affect change, or they want to point out government overreach, or
expose a crime.
Yeah,
exactly. This is the thing, and so that aspect of it, it is vitally important to the sort of the construction.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think for people who, I think there's all sorts of reasons why people become leaders in the conspiracy movement. I think, narcissism is one, addiction is one. But yeah, the hero's journey, which I actually had never heard of. I think I'm one of the only people in the world who'd never heard of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey.
Really?
Yeah, and I just came across it. I was listening to a bunch of podcast interviews walking through New York with Mickey Willis. Because Mickey Willis is the star. Yeah, he's the man who gave the world Pandemic 1, 2, and 3. At the beginning of season 2 of Things Fell Apart, I do a show about Judy Mikovits, who's like the star of Pandemic. So I had a brainwave. Why don't I do a final episode about the man who interviewed Judy Mikovits, Mickey Willis? So I listened to 1 million Mickey Willis interviews. And in one of them, he starts talking about his love of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And I sort of stopped, rewound, and sort of listened to it a few times. Because, yeah, just like you, it seemed really interesting and answered a lot of questions. So basically, Joseph Campbell comes up with this, idea, and I can't remember when, like the 40s or the 50s or whatever, that from the cave drawings through to the present day, this particular narrative structure is dominant, and it's the hero's journey. And he wasn't a lifestyle guru or anything like that. He was just somebody who was interested in narrative structure. And the hero's journey is, a reluctant hero is thrust out of his world into another world. It's mainly men, sometimes it's women. They fight the dragons. The threshold guardians try and stop them from moving forward. The mentors help them move forward. Finally, there's a big battle with the dragon. Look that the dragon's going to win. The hero's on the ground, and then the hero rises up and slays the dragon. And the reason why Joseph Campbell got so popular in recent times is because of George Lucas, because George Lucas said that he based Star Wars on the hero's journey. But it turns out that even though Joseph Campbell never intended this to be a way that people should live their lives, just a way that people should understand the narrative, all of these people like Mickey Willis became like obsessed with the hero's journey and are living their life that way. And so Mickey Willis, Anthony Fauci is a dragon and Pfizer's a dragon. But the thing is, if you're a documentarian, thinking of the world in terms of heroes and dragons is a terrible idea. And that's something that I talk about in Saving Publicly Shamed, because that's what we do on Twitter too. On Twitter, everyone's a hero or a dragon. In the psychopath test, my book, The Psychopath Test, I kind of look at it as well. That, the downside of mental health labeling is that we're defined by our most extreme edges. So all of these things in mental health, on Twitter, Mickey Willis is all about robbing the world of its nuance and instead thinking of everything in terms of heroes and dragons. So when I discovered Mickey Willis's love of the hero's journey, that felt, really relevant to trying to solve mysteries of why people have become the way that we've become.
It's interesting. There was a theme that was running through the series, which is an excellent series. Both series are fantastic, by the way. And also you've got the Psychopath Tour coming up, which, we want to promote as well.
Yes. Yeah, I'm doing a major Psychopath Tour in October, November, including in towns I've never spoken before, like Ipswich.
Steady. Fair enough.
Coming to Bristol?
Am I coming to Bristol? Yes, but I've completely forgotten. Where. But if people are interested, if they Google the promoters FANE, F-A-N-A, it's very easy to find the tour dates. Jon Ronson, Psychopath Night 2024. You'll find the tour dates. But yeah, I'll be on within 10 miles of everybody's home.
Excellent.
Well, fantastic. So one of the themes that basically, just going back to your previous point, was this sort of kind of thing about our identity. For example, one of the things was the trauma, the sort of hierarchies of trauma. Other things were about people's identity, be it sort of not wanting kids to learn certain things at school or being confused about trans identity, the cat litter tray and stuff like that. Do you think that basically this is sort of kind of the problem that sort of fuels the culture war, is that everybody's kind of their own main character and everybody's struggling to define themselves? And when other people seem to define themselves in sort of very concrete ways, that annoys people, because they're like, I can't get a grasp on this life. Why are you so seemingly satisfied and secure and whatnot? What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know if I'm answering the question directly or not, but, when I first learned about identity politics, it seemed like a really good idea. There's loads I don't know about Black culture and stuff. So I thought, okay, this is an opportunity to learn loads of things that I didn't know. And so when I first learned about identity politics, I thought it seemed like pretty good stuff. And then people on Twitter were warning me, no, this is what you're writing about in Saving Publicly Shamed. Identity politics is all about dividing people. It's all about creating hierarchies. And now where I am, I suppose, is there's a line I really like in season 2 of Things Fell Apart, where Li Fong, who's a former reporter for The Intercept, there's America, but I think you can probably say the same thing about Britain. Well, definitely America. Because America is a class-based society that pretends that it's an identity-based society. And that's really resonates with me. And for some reason, that's an unpopular thing to say. People don't like it when you say that. Was I don't really understand. I guess, this is sort of maybe what was being played out when it was Bernie versus Hillary in 2016. Bernie was the class person and Hillary was the identity person. But for me, it makes total sense. What's wrong with seeing the world in terms of class instead of identity, or class alongside identity, at least?
Well, I suppose that class is sort of imposed on you, whereas identity, you can sort of pick your own. So people don't tend to like to think of themselves. This is always sort of fascinating why people vote for Boris Johnson or Donald Trump or something like that, because essentially it's going to end up bad for everybody. But I think that's the point. People identify and go, oh, that's not me. that isn't me. I don't identify as that. Whereas if you thought of yourself as the proletariat or whatever, like, do you know what I mean? Then it's very difficult to avoid that. So I wonder if that's got something to do with it.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe. And of course, the rich, if we don't think of the world as class-based, then you know what happens? The rich get richer. And
Yes, yeah.
while we're all scrabbling around attacking each other's identities.
Yeah, I think that's very, very much the case. Is like, I mean, this was one of the things that I took from the first series of the podcast, was that a lot of these issues that could be considered the culture war, they're either incorrect, misunderstandings, vastly overstated, or just completely fabricated. Like, wedge issues created simply to cause that division. The first episode where you were talking about what's his name, Schaefer, and the introduction of abortion as a wedge issue was mind blowing.
It's extraordinary that. Yeah, I'll recount it very, very quickly. So, as much as like 5 years after Roe versus Wade, the only people protesting abortion in America were Roman Catholics. Now, lastly, people have said, no, Presbyterians were too. But one thing, but I haven't done research on that, so I don't know. But one thing's for certain, which is that the Southern Baptist Convention, which is, as far as I understand, the second biggest Christian denomination in America, out of which, people like Billy Graham came.
Oh, that's the evangelical sort of aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, the sort of, yeah. Yeah, I didn't really know the phrase Southern Baptist Convention, but yeah, it's like evangelical Protestants, and they were pro-choice or ambivalent at best. And then this kid comes along, called Frank Schaefer, like 19-year-old kid living in the Swiss Alps with his father, who was a evangelical art historian, Francis Schaefer. And Frank wanted to be a Hollywood director, and he wanted a show reel to show Hollywood producers. And so him and his father made this documentary series where he convinced his father to put abortion in it because it was just a personal bugbear of Frank's, because he'd become like a father at 19. So he makes these documentaries with incredibly arresting visual images of like 1,000 dolls spread out on the Dead Sea, baking in the heat, these like metaphors for abortion, that was so powerful, and it galvanized Christian evangelists into becoming anti-abortion. So all of the murders that happened in the 90s of abortion doctors, you can trace back to Frank Schaefer and his desire to become a Hollywood director. Frank's now, horrified by it and tries to make amends. Yeah.
Sorry, John, did you just say that he was driven to sort of be very focused, sort of anti-abortion? He was anti-abortion because he had a kid when he was 19?
Yeah. So it was like a personal bugbear for him. He'd had a kid at 19.
Oh, I'd misinterpreted that. I thought you'd said that, like, if I can't have an abortion, why should anyone else?
No. No, he'd had a kid at 19 and he loved his kid. And so he was against abortion personally for that reason. But Protestant evangelists weren't against abortion until, their documentary came along, and then Planned Parenthood were protesting the documentary, and then evangelists were protesting Planned Parenthood, and, boom, it exploded.
You mentioned like Jerry Falwell, the moral majority, Billy Graham and such like that. Have you ever, has your research ever sort of crossed paths with the C Street Group or Douglas Coe or the Family or any of those, the people that run the...
No, out of those three, the only one I've even heard of is the Family.
Essentially, they come out of the Heritage Foundation, so they're all connected to, and the John Birch Society, so they're all sort of in the same sort of ballpark arena, but they seem to be, they're almost like, for example, it's slightly tangential, but the phrase cultural Marxism came from a bloke called Paul Weyrich out of the Heritage Foundation, and they're very much connected to Billy Graham and Douglas Coe and that sort of thing. And it's just that there was particularly in the first series of Things Fell Apart, there was a very, very definite streak of evangelical influence, particularly in America. Is that still prevalent?
Yes, I'm sure it is. And I'm sure that's, to a great extent, the reason why Roe versus Wade ended up getting repealed. Jerry Falwell, who was the head of Moral Majority, said that it was Francis Schaefer who convinced him to become radical. So he, the Falwell himself, cited Schaefer as his reason for, I think he said, putting on the gloves and getting in the ring. He said otherwise he would have just been yeah. So it all goes back to this little copying in the Swiss Alps with Francis and Frank Schaefer, and Eric Clapton would turn up and like listen to his speeches and so on. And yeah, this chalet in the Swiss Alps is where it all started. Yeah.
That's what's so
crazy.
great about the series, though, is that basically, as you describe it, the ripples that come out and the start of effects and stuff like that. I mean, for example, your Judy Mikovits episode was fascinating. I have to admit, when it started and you're chatting to Judy, I was like, oh no, oh good God, oh he's fallen for it.
Well, I hadn't heard of it either. And I started getting excited because she was talking about ME/CFS, because my partner has ME/CFS. So I was like, oh, is there something hidden? Is there a cure or something? And no.
Yeah. I mean, again, extraordinary. So Judy was working for this institute called the Whittemore-Peterson Institute. And I mean, for me, the Judy Mikovits episode is the reason why I wanted to make Things Fell Apart, even before I'd ever heard of Judy. But her story is so resonant to why I wanted to make the show to begin with. Because Judy, she, to cut a very long story short, and I recommend people listen to the story. The story takes 35 minutes to tell, and that's how long the episode is. So, but to cut it very, very short, Judy was working for this institute who thought that they'd come up with a cure for chronic fatigue syndrome, but it was, and the cause of it, XMRV, which was a little known mouse virus. And the theory they came up with, which was published in Science, which is, a huge, huge place to publish a scientific finding, was that millions of people were walking around with this mouse virus, most of them asymptomatic, giving each other chronic fatigue syndrome. So this was like a huge thought. And so scientists all over America tried to replicate Judy's findings and couldn't. And so Judy doubled down and refused to hand over her research materials and ended up going on the run and hiding out on a boat. And the police got after her and she ended up going to jail. I mean, this terrible spiraling employment conflict. But I think Judy was so burnt by this, was so wounded by this. And it shouldn't, I'm on Judy's side regarding how terrible events spiraled.
Yeah. It fleshed it out. It turned her from a pantomime villain, because obviously, the things that she's saying in Plandemic are ridiculous, right, and dangerous. But it gave an understanding, and I actually felt quite sympathetic for her in the end. Like, not for her actions, but for the sort of circumstance that she's been in,
Absolutely. And I think you'll find that a lot, people, look, I'm not going to armchair diagnose Judy or anyone, but if what it is narcissistically inclined, I think one aspect of narcissism is that if you're wounded, it's very hard for you to get over it. And I don't think that's true of all narcissists. In fact, I know some narcissists who are very nice. In a lot of ways.
It's like you've worked in television, haven't you? So
yeah. So this isn't something that's, endemic amongst narcissists, but I think there's certain people who are that way inclined, who, if they're wounded, can't get over it. And so they get trapped in this, like in Poltergeist, with everything spinning around, and they can't get out until they lash out and lash out and lash out. And I'm sure we've all seen, I don't want to name them because I don't want to plant hornets' nest, but we've all seen people on Twitter who all they do is lash out and escalate and escalate and escalate because they feel wounded. And I wonder whether Judy's involvement in Plandemic is at least,
Yeah, had you seen Plandemic before you spoke to her?
I mean, I watched it when I was researching it, but the way I first heard of Plandemic was up here in upstate New York, 6 weeks into lockdown. A good friend of mine who lives in a farmhouse, about a mile from me, said to me, "Read about Plandemic." Like one of the world's most eminent scientists.
Yes.
Is saying that everything we're looking through isn't what you think. So that's how I first heard of Plandemic. And then when I was starting to make season 2 as Things Fell Apart, and I decided I wanted to make it about the lockdown years. I remembered my friend saying that to me, so that's why I watched Pandemic, and then I learned about Judy's backstory, about the medical scandal, and so on.
Have you kept in touch with her, or have you followed her since Pandemic at all?
Not really, no. I mean, in the documentary, in our documentary, Things Fell Apart, we traced Judy in the years after Pandemic to an extent. But no, I haven't heard from her since the documentary came out.
It's interesting what you said, because she's kind of doubled down even further. She's now of the opinion that XMRV is the cause of pretty much everything.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. But she sort of had a bit of a falling out with the COVID denial sort of lot because she thinks that a virus does exist. And a lot of people, David Icke, a chap called Andrew Kaufman, and various other people who basically out to grift, have gone down the route that COVID just simply doesn't exist. And so she became somewhat persona non grata in that particular thing, which is
Well, they also
ridiculous.
don't think viruses exist either, do they?
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is it, yeah.
They should have been in the emergency room with me 2 weeks ago when I was nearly dying of a pulmonary embolism, and then tell me that COVID doesn't exist.
But would they say you were vaxxed?
Yeah, that's been on my mind slightly. So I got COVID for the first time, a month ago. And then 2 weeks after that, I'm rushed to hospital with a blood clot in my lungs. And the last time I got vaxxed was last September. Now, there's an argument like, what's the point? One could argue like a damn lot of good that booster did me, given that I was hospitalized with COVID 4 months later. But a couple of people did say to me, and by the way, to counter that, like, who knows how much worse it might have been if I hadn't been boosted. Like,
this is the thing, isn't it?
Yeah. But a couple of people did say to me, like, maybe it was the vaccination that gave you the blood clot. And I was like, I got the vaccination in September. I got COVID that now, so what's more likely? Like, if one of those things gave me a blood clot, what's more likely? Yeah.
Exactly. But that's what they'd say.
Yeah.
David Icke has recently gone down the whole HIV isn't real route for some strange reason as well. Now, obviously, you spent some time with David just prior to him becoming like a sort of superstar, really, as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I was with David around the same time I got into Bohemian Grove with Alex Jones. It was all around the same period.
It was for your Secret Rulers of the World documentary, wasn't it?
Yes, Secret Rulers of the World, and eventually it became my book then. So all the adventures exist, both in sort of written form in Gem and in documentary form in Secret Rulers. David, I could just come out with his theory about lizards, that we were being ruled by giant lizards. So I I followed him around for, weeks, maybe a couple of months, but mainly in Vancouver when local activists were trying to stop him every step of the way, stopping from going on the radio, stopping from giving talks at bookstores. Of course, all of that martyred him further. And, and he ended up in a sellout talk at a huge theatre there, in part because he'd been banned, because the activists had stopped him.
Yeah, it makes it notorious, doesn't it? It makes it forbidden and, what's the word? Like a Pandora's box sort of thing, doesn't it, really? So
totally, yeah.
Hello, initiates of the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast. Dom Jolly here. How are you? Sorry to butt in, but I just wanted to let you know that I've written, a book that I'm very, very proud of called The Conspiracy Tourist, in which I travel around the world taking a look at the weird world of conspiracies, and I think you might like it. Not only that, but I'm touring the book and doing live shows all around England from the 28th of Feb to the end of March, and it would be smashing to see you there. I think you'd like it. If you are interested, go to my website, www.domjolly.tv. And now, on with the podcast. Thanks.
Yes, Secret Rulers of the World was the first thing that I saw you in.
Right.
Because I had watched, obviously, Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove, and then I found your Secret Rulers of the World episode on it and the David Icke episode. So I downloaded those. And I was like, yeah, this guy's trying to make us look stupid.
Right.
I rewatched it like last week, and you're not at all. You're just literally just showing what's happening.
Totally, yeah.
You're giving everyone a very fair time. And it kind of proved to me, like, so we see what we want to see.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's what I was feeling at the time. I just felt like, oh, anyone else covering this is trying to cover it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, so take, my time at Bohemian Grove with Alex Jones. I mean, the honest truth is I was so excited to be on such a crazy, mysterious adventure. I felt so much like, Scooby-Doo. That I was like on this mad adventure. Like, trying to make Alex look stupid was like the last thing on my mind. I was just having the time of my life, It was about, sneaking at Bohemian Grove was a very, very stressful night. But it was also one of the best nights of my life. I mean, my God, I kept on being reminded of that movie, The Perfect Storm, and that George Clooney movie. I was thinking, this is my perfect storm. I'm sneaking into this secret club with Alex Jones. Where we're going to try and find out if Henry Kissinger, my joy was, Henry Kissinger takes part in a mock human sacrifice. My joy of being on that adventure was way shallower than I'm out to make Alex Jones look ridiculous. I was just loving that. I was loving it.
Something I noticed from watching it the second time round is how much I don't believe Alex thought something really evil was going on there. It felt more like he was playing into it, but Mike Hansen really did believe it. You could see in his face. He was like, no, there's something really bad going on there. They call the Davidians the cult, but these people are the cult. And I thought that was really actually very powerful because that's really how I saw it too. That there was something really going on.
I totally agree with you. I don't doubt Mike Hansen's sincerity at all when it comes to, the way he was, interpreting what happened that night. I don't, whereas Alex, there was this moment, I've told the story a bunch of times, but there was this moment when I was back, I mean, this is 20 something years ago now, so, forgive me if I get it slightly wrong, but I was back in London and Alex had given an interview where he said that he overheard, when we were at Bohemian Grove, he overheard these two old men whisper to each other, yeah, we're going to get him elected. And I phoned Alex and I said, Alex, I wasn't with Alex that much actually when we were inside Bohemian Grove because I was with Nick the lawyer and John Sargent, producing at the time, and Alex was with Mike Hansen, so we barely saw each other. So I can't say for sure that Alex didn't overhear that. But I did say to Alex, come on, that's exactly the kind of thing you would have liked to have overheard. And my memory is Alex saying something like, I know that, you know that, but I'm not going to tell my listeners that.
Oh, right. Interesting.
Yeah, so for years, that I judged Alex entirely on that he was a showman. He was opportunistic. And right up until I met Josh, his cameraman, in 2016 at this hotel in DC, and I told him what I just told you. And Josh said, oh, no. I've been with Alex every day for the last 4 years. The way he is off camera is exactly the way he is on camera. So Josh sort of shook my theory a little.
Did you also meet Rob Jacobson, who was his editor and cameraman for a while?
I think so, yeah.
He's also left. He gave evidence at the deposition for Sandy Hook, which we interviewed him on here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. If I didn't meet him, I think I definitely had some text exchanges with him at the same time. I'll tell you who I did meet in 2016, though. So this guy, and I actually can't remember if it could have been Josh, or it could have been this guy, Morgan Hemi, who made the documentary Get Me Roger Stone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because he was there too. And somebody said to me, if you're on the street corner at this particular hour, Alex is going to be there with Roger Stone and you can maybe sneak in and he's going to be in this sort of Airbnb and that's where they're doing InfoWars. So that's exactly what I did. I kind of stood there and I was like, oh, Alex.
Oh, fancy seeing you here.
Yeah. So I went in with them. I just like went in with them into this Airbnb, and there they were making InfoWars, and there was Roger Stone, and there was Alex, and I think Morgan Femi, but I can't remember. But, and I don't think I've ever told anyone's story before, but there was somebody else in that room. There was maybe 10 or 15 people in that room altogether. And one of the people in that room was glaring at me like he wanted to kill me. Like, it happened a couple of times in my life that somebody hated me and was giving me a death stare. And then this guy went up to Alex and whispered, pointed at me and whispered, like something along the lines of, that's Jon Ronson over there. Do you want me to kick him out? And Alex went, no, he's fine. Let him stay. He's fine. And the guy stood down. And guess who that guy was?
My guess is going to be like David Duke or someone like that.
No. Joe Biggs.
Oh, Proud Boys.
Yeah, he's now in jail for decades for being one of the architects of January the 6th.
Wow.
Was he there with Roger Stone?
Well, he was in the room. I think he was there with Alex, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, there's been a couple of times in my life when somebody has looked at me like they wanted to kill me. And that was one of those times. Yeah.
What was the other time, if you don't mind?
Oh, the other time was, actually, they later apologized. The other time was this documentary I made called Kidneys for Jesus, which is about a religious group that was giving all their spare kidneys to strangers. And there was a woman in the group called Susan who, this group eventually hated me, really hated me. But I had an agreement with Susan. Susan was giving up her kidney. So we filmed her operation. We filmed the kidney being taken out of her and put into somebody else. So at some point we agreed to show Susan, the footage in the documentary that involved her. We wouldn't show her the whole documentary, but we'd show her scenes. So she came to Channel 4 and we showed her scenes, and it was the same stare. Susan looked at me like she wanted to kill me. This is before she saw the scenes, by the way. And then a couple of years later, she emailed me to say that she'd left the group, and I was right. And she kind of apologized, and I was like,
oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Those were the two times I've remembered somebody really giving me a death stare.
You see, I thought you were going to say when you were chased by the Bilderberg group.
Right.
True.
No. I mean, I was scary, but nobody looked like they wanted to kill me.
I love that bit in the book where you explain if they can see you, you're probably in no danger, and you say something along the lines of, "What if I'm just particularly good at spotting
them?" Yeah, and somebody with an anxiety disorder, you'd think you would be especially good. Yeah, and the woman from the British Embassy said, this is after I've been chased by the Bilderberg group. If you know you're being followed, they're probably just trying to intimidate you, and the dangerous ones are those that you don't know are following you. And I said, yeah, what if they are the dangerous ones? I just happen to be naturally good at spotting them.
Oh, dear. Well, so the Bilderberg group, that's a bit sort of passé nowadays in the conspiracy world. We've got the World Economic Forum now.
Right, the Great Reset.
Yeah, absolutely, the Great Reset. And we've done a bit of looking into that and stuff like that. We'd found, actually, interestingly, that the sort of where the first people that put forward the theory that these guys were the Illuminati, whatever, was the Heartlands Institute, which is a massive fossil fuel think tank conglomerate. Basically.
Oh,
yeah. Now, here's the thing, right? Okay, as far as we can tell, what the Great Reset is offering, or the World Economic Forum is offering, is stakeholder capitalism, where basically, they give the impression of giving a shit. They don't. But it's fluffy and whatnot. Whereas the Heartlands Institute, oil industry, is pure capitalism. It's shareholder capitalism. So they don't want to be responsible for anybody. Now, to our mind, the entire creation of the theory came from this one group going, could you not do that? You're ruining it. Do you know what I mean? Because their form of capitalism is far more attractive to, say, MPs, lobbyists and stuff like that than shareholder capitalism. And so it's kind of, that was where it was. They're sort of, to our mind, they were just cross that they were being exposed and made to look worse than this other group.
Right. Well, that's fascinating. That's a great find. That's really interesting.
The first instance of talking about the Grey Reset definitely came from them, and then after that it was Laura Ingraham, and then Candice Owens, and then various people who were also sort of in that sort of,
And Glenn Beck.
yeah. And obviously you spoke to Glenn Beck.
Yeah, I did. Glenn Beck's interesting. He went through a real sort of, evolution around 2016 where he became, very anti-Trump, and in fact I met him back around then too. He wanted to be the kind of conciliatory person, but then he changed back again.
Well, I would. Sadly, that's where the audience is, isn't it? Though this is, I wonder if that sort of things. Talking about like people like Glenn Beck, do you think Joe Rogan and the influence that people like Joe Rogan have can be potentially harmful? I mean, specifically because he jumped all over several things like ivermectin and certain COVID vaccine sort of silliness, and then he got all bent out of shape out of the people identifying as cats at school.
Right. Yeah. I think quite a lot about Joe Rogan. So I went on Joe Rogan's show 2 or 3 times, definitely twice, possibly 3 times. And it was, positive experience. I felt like he was very, particularly the first time I went on a show before, when he was really, really successful, but not the unbelievable, powerhouse he is now. And he reminds me a little bit of like Robbie Williams, and that he had a foot in both camps. He's willing to go from one to the other. He's like a classical liberal kind of thing. And so I felt my first experience of Joe Rogan was really positive. But yeah, like so many other people, Jordan Peterson, it felt like he doubled down and just became, the thing that now I don't want to be too unfair because, obviously with Joe Rogan, I don't listen to him 3 hours a day. And on the rare occasion I do dip into a Joe Rogan thing, very often he's been kind of pretty reasonable. So there's a part of me that think, okay, the stuff that the world knows about Joe Rogan is just these sort of, the hand-picked worst bits are the bits that go viral.
The clips, yeah.
Yeah, which is quite possible. But it's absolutely true that, say, the cat litter stuff, he was promoting that moral panic. He did go back on it when he realized that it was a hoax.
Oh, did he? You see,
yeah.
That kind of proves your point that it's the clips thing, really, then, isn't it?
In a way, but at the same time, I don't want to like.
Well, the clips are still there, aren't they? Like, do you know what I mean?
The clips are still there, and so he does fact check. There was this thing where he was accusing Biden of of this thing, and then it turned out that it was Trump.
It was Trump that actually said it. Yeah, absolutely.
And again, they recanted on the air. But I don't want to be like a Joe Rogan apologist here, because the fact is, he does 3 hours a day, and he does say these things, and it is, I think a lot of the stuff that he says does cause real, genuine problems in the world. But I would say that, I suppose what I'm saying is that, like, I wish I listened to Joe Rogan 3 hours a day so I could do a very proper, full, holistic analysis of him. But I also wish that the Joe Rogan who first interviewed me back whenever it was, 2015, 2016, whenever, was the Joe Rogan that was dominant today. The Joe Rogan who would have on all sorts of people from across the spectrum and listen to all sorts of points of view. Like, I wonder whether that Joe Rogan is a little bit less now.
This is the thing. He's kind of bounced all over the place. So, I mean, there was famously, he was, really making a fool of Candice Owens and stuff like that. But then latterly, he sort of entertained some very, very right-wing, silly positions and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it shouldn't. It's kind of indefensible. Having all sorts of viewpoints doesn't mean giving easy rides to people who do bad things.
This is that's something that is done throughout the conspiracy world. They'll interview somebody like a Tommy Robinson or a Katie Hopkins or something, and there's absolutely no merit to it other than to hopefully pilfer some of their fans, and it will be done under the banner of, we're just asking questions. We're going where the mainstream fears to tread.
Yeah, and that stuff is nonsense. I mean, yeah, I can think of other, I've seen people who I've admired, and I won't know names because I don't want to sort of put the hornet's nest, but I've seen people who I admire giving really free rein to people who do really bad things in the world. And it's, that for me, that isn't what listening to all points of view, you have to still challenge people. You can't just be a dick.
No. I heard you say on another interview that you did recently that you think that generally people are getting bored of the culture war, and I wonder if you still agree with that, because, we're seeing the sort of the burgeoning of Trump for the next election, this ridiculousness at the Texas border and stuff like that. Maybe that's just me seeing it through the echo chamber of Twitter or whatever. You live in America. Like, what do you think? I mean, is it dying a death, or is it still strong?
I could be wrong. Like, when I'm optimistic, I always think maybe I was too optimistic. The reasons why I said that first was because Ron DeSantis was doing so badly, and he really was the sort of anti-woke candidate, even, more so than Trump even. And so that gave me some kind of hope that his stuff wasn't really working. And there's certain culture wars that I think are burning themselves out and people are getting sick of. And in season 1, as things fell apart, the episode that's most popular is an episode called Miracle, which is things coming together. So I took all of this sort of anecdotal stuff and thought, maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel. And maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel. But we still got a ton of a way to go.
Was that the Tammy Faye Baker episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was incredibly moving. I thought it was interesting as well, and vital that you put that in, because it showed that it's not all one side politically, or it's not all evangelical or whatever. Do you know what I mean? There is sort of like voices in the wilderness or what. Right. Going back to you've got this upcoming tour, the Psychopath Tour.
Yes.
Here's a question. Do you think Alex Jones might be a psychopath?
No, I think Alex Jones was actually diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder during his custody hearing.
Really?
Yes, I was actually in court when it happened. And I think there's a big, from what I understand, I'm not a psychologist, but from what I understand, there's significant difference between narcissism and psychopathy. Is that, the outward manifestations can seem quite similar.
Right.
Manipulative, lack of empathy and that kind of stuff. But what's going on underneath the surface is very different. So with a narcissist, there's a whole lot of shit going on underneath the surface. There's turmoil, there's fires, there's rage, there's, wounds that won't heal and so on. Whereas with psychopaths, they say what's going on under the surface is nothing.
Oh, they're numb, are they? Right.
Yeah,
so,
happiness, emptiness.
Yeah, that does define Alex, doesn't it?
I kind of think so, yeah. Like, Alex is emotional.
Yeah.
Psychopaths are emotionless.
I did notice when I was looking at the psychopath test that basically, I think you need a score of 30 in America to be considered a psychopath and 25 in the UK. So what does that say about America?
Yeah, actually, I think it's not quite as broad as that. I think it's 25 in Britain and 26 or 27 in America, but there's still that differential.
Oh, is it?
So yes, America's a little bit more psychopath happy than Britain.
There's the gag about psychopath test. Did you take the psychopath test? Yeah, I did, but I didn't finish it. Halfway through, I felt compelled to start torturing other tests and make younger tests watch. So it was inconclusive at best.
Well, one of the items on board easily. I can't remember what the type of heading is. But they get bored easily, so that's maybe why they don't complete the test. In psychiatry, if you've got OCD, let's say, or bipolar disorder or whatever, most often you're invited to take part in your own diagnosis. But with psychopathy, you're not, because psychiatrists don't trust psychopaths. So they don't trust them to take part in their own diagnosis. So that's the kind of interesting thing about the test. It's done on them as opposed to with them.
Right. Okay. So when you were doing the psychopath test, because obviously, you've got the tour coming up and whatnot, is that going to be a sort of a retelling of the book or stories that didn't make the book?
A little bit of stories that didn't make the book. lots of mystery guests.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm going to have lots of guests appearing via Zoom and weird. I would say the way I try and structure that particular talk, and in fact, all my talks, is for them to work for people who've read the book and work for people who haven't. So ultimately, that means it's maybe 40-50% of the show will be stuff from the book, and then the rest of it will be new stuff. But I haven't quite figured out the tour yet, what I'm going to do. I did it before, but I sort of want to make it slightly different to last time. So I don't quite know what I'm going to take out and what new stuff I'm going to put in.
when you were doing the original book, was there anyone that you met that actually scared you?
Toto Constant, the Haitian death squad leader.
Yeah. Well, this is what I was thinking potentially. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he did some terrible. Also, he was in prison in upstate New York.
Oh, right. Yeah. For the fraud, was it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for mortgage fraud. That's why I interviewed him. And I'd never been to upstate New York before. And it was so bleak. It was like April with hailstones. It was freezing. Everything through this hail, and I ended up at this maximum security prison that looked like the Shawshank Redemption. And I got out of my car, fought my way through the hailstones and walked into the prison. And the first thing and the prison guards all looked up at me. I said, "Hi, I'm here to see Toto Constant." And all the prison guards went, "It's Harry Potter." And so, and so then but I remember leaving thinking, my God, that was bleak. Like upstate New York is so bleak, and day was like my bleakest day. I'm never coming here again. And then I got really scared, like Toto Constant might find me and kill me because he won't like what I wrote about him in the book. Anyway, cut to 10 years later, 15 years later, and I now live about 8 miles from his place. And it's lovely, by the way.
That's just about the distance that they'll get before they'll get caught, isn't it?
Well, luckily Toto got deported back to Haiti after he got kicked out.
Oh,
yeah. I know. I was thinking, yes, you.
David Shayler's in the psychopath test. Brent has had some interactions with David over the years.
Okay.
What was David in the book for?
Well,
again,
I've got to say, if there was one chapter I would take out of the book, it would be that one. Because I was looking at that point in the book, it becomes like a sort of broader look at, I think the chapter is called The Right Sort of Madness, or The Right Kind of Madness, because it becomes a lot broader look at how reality TV, I met this researcher for shows like Jerry Springer, who told me that she had a secret trick that she would use on her to decide which guests to book. And the secret trick was that she would ask them what medication they were on. And if it was something like lithium, she said whoa, you're I'm not going to go there. But if it was Prozac, it's perfect.
Happy day.
Yeah. So, so my David Shayler interaction was really part of that. It was a kind of broader look at which madnesses are kind of entertaining to people and which madnesses are you want to kind of leave it alone because we don't want to be too exploitative. And so the David Shayler made it into that part of the book.
Was it before he became Christ? Because he's now convinced that he's Christ and that David Icke is his John the Baptist.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he also he transitioned. He's now, I think his name is Dolores. Her name's Dolores.
Dolores, yeah. I think the Dolores stuff had happened by then, but I don't think the Christ stuff had happened. Yeah. But yeah, I was about to do a whole big self-analysis about my David Shayler action. But instead, I'm going to ask you a question. So we talked about Josh having a crisis of conscience working for Alex Jones. Was there a moment with you guys? Was there a pebble thrown in the pond when you thought, I don't believe anymore?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And it came from different sides. Brent basically came from sort of examining the theories and noticing discrepancies and things that didn't add up and things that totally just contradicted the whole sort of purpose of it.
Yeah.
And I came from the industry, so to speak. I was actually working with David Icke and some other people at the start of COVID. And I literally watched them lie about COVID because the lie was more...
lucrative?
Yeah, well, yes, but I think it was also a better story for their audience. Their audience didn't want to hear that there was a virus going around. Their audience wanted to hear that it was 5G or something like that. And I genuinely don't think that they thought it was going to get as serious as it did. But they no, it doesn't exist. No, you don't want to take the vaccine, all of this sort of stuff. And I was like, I don't want to be involved in this anymore, because I knew people who were huge fans of David's who got ill because they listened to him.
Right.
There's no virus. You don't need masks. You don't need to do this. You don't be a sheeple. Don't be all this. And I mean, there's people that died that were fans of David that I know, like friends of mine that died from COVID, that were in the sort of industry as well. And the pressure not to wear masks, not to have a vaccine and stuff like that from your peers. And if you know, as we were saying before, like, the conspiracy gives you a community and a whole sort of network of allies and friends, and you're all in this together and whatnot. And all of a sudden to be told that basically, like, you can't be trusted because you believe what's on the news. And it was ridiculous, because it was like one of these things where it's like, this isn't worth it. Right? Tell people the Queen's a lizard, right? Okay. Tell them that the moon is a spaceship broadcasting reality. Don't tell people not to pretend that a virus that could possibly kill you or hurt you very badly doesn't exist.
Totally.
And at that point, I just went, I'm done. I don't want to be involved in this anymore. Like, and it really upset me as well, because even though I didn't believe all the crap, the lizards and stuff like that, I still thought that there was integrity there. Like, do you know what I mean? That maybe they're not correct, but they genuinely believe what they believe and stuff. And the drive and the need for content and the need to be contrary to the news and the need to be sensational to get that audience share and stuff like that, it got ugly, to be quite honest. And it wasn't just David. There was various other people within the industry that I saw do the same thing, pander to nonsense in order to get lionized by an audience. And I was like, that's not what this is about. This is not the point of it. And it just goes against everything that is the reason I got involved in this stuff in the first place. So I just went, I'm done.
So your trajectory sounds very similar to Josh, from InfoWars.
Yeah.
But then
so.
yours was slightly different. Yours was more kind of coming from just research and just coming from the inside.
Yeah, from being like a true believer. Like, I was super deep. I was into the whole, like, all of these attacks, terrorist attacks, mass shootings, all of that kind of stuff was rituals. This is all before QAnon was even around. But that's how I looked at all of it. And the events of Sandy Hook, basically, when Alex started pushing the hoax narrative and the crisis actor narrative in like early 2013, because obviously the shooting happens in December 2012, and then the theories start going around in 2013. All the truther community was talking about that, and I just couldn't get behind it. At the end of the day, I thought these things were real. You needed, like, these children needed to die to be sacrificed for the ritual. Like, and if you're telling me that didn't happen, well, I can't believe you.
Yeah.
And it continued all the way up till like 2015, 2016, all through Boston bombing, Boston Marathon bombing, Pulse nightclub shooting, the Charlie Hebdo shooting, the Bataclan shooting, all of this stuff. Like, everyone was denying that it was real, and Lee Rigby. Everyone's denying that it was real, denying, like, my ritual, essentially. So I kind of start pulling myself away from a lot of the community at that time. I just didn't want to speak to anyone about it or listen to them. Didn't listen to, Ike, or Jordan Maxwell was another person I used to listen to a lot, and Alex Jones and everyone else. Like, I couldn't deal with listening to their stuff. So I kind of went on my own path, and there was other stuff that started to happen, like between 2015 and 2018, that really didn't gel with my idea of a new world order, of this one world government that was coming, the police state that would take over the entire world. And that was basically the election of Trump, the Brexit vote, and also, funnily enough, the election of Jeremy Corbyn to the Labour Party. Like, all of this just really didn't suit the one world government, the New World Order. Obviously, so to break it down, Trump, like, it was supposed to be Hillary. Like, if the New World Order was around, like, Hillary was going to be the one in charge. Because I'm sure you know the narrative of, like, leaders are selected, not elected, like, in the in the conspiracy community. That's exactly what I thought. So how the hell did this guy get elected? Like, that this doesn't make sense. And then the Brexit vote happened, which also was, you know, brought about by democracy. And then Corbyn, like, I'd always seen this guy as like an anti-war kind of thorn in Tony Blair's side. It's not any major player or anything like that. Somehow he took control of, like, the establishment Labour Party.
Yeah.
And all through this, what I had noticed was that votes were actually working. People was actually doing this. There was no hidden hand behind, like, not an overarching hidden hand. Of course, like, people are trying to game the voters, but not in that sort of way. I didn't think votes counted.
Yeah.
So all of that, like, started to really make the whole thing shatter to me. You know, it was like I always compare my belief system at that time to a Jenga tower, and just more and more of these, like, blocks started coming out, and those three were the ones that just made the whole thing collapse. And I just had to start trying to figure it out from 2018 to, like, 2021 when I started talking out about it. It was just, I had to rebuild everything after 2018 to try and figure out exactly what the hell's going on here.
Yeah. The story that I think Morgan, who made Get Roger Stone, because he was there on election night at InfoWars, and, you know, he says that Alex just looked, you know, just completely bewildered. Like, you know, they were so, for their narrative to work, Trump would lose.
Yeah.
And then when Trump won, it just bewildered, and he looked almost upset, Morgan said.
Well,
yeah. Like, what the fuck do we do now?
Well, it's life altering, isn't it? Because you basically, everything that you sort of expected and knew was going to happen, the complete opposite happened, basically. Yeah. So this is the thing. And we took quite a lot of influence from yourself, actually, because we still yearn that fix. Do you know what I mean? So, but what we've discovered is that if you find the origin of conspiracy theories, that's almost as good as finding out the conspiracy theory yourself, because you're going the next level deep. We're going even deeper into the rabbit hole. Like,
we're doing our research.
Absolutely, you do what the conspiracy leaders always say that you should do your research. Absolutely. You know, I sort of equated to, if you turn up at a party, it's quite late and everybody's yelling at each other, it's impossible to know, you know, how it all started. So sometimes it's very, you know, it's just really interesting to just go back and try and find, like, the pebble being sort of in your pocket. It could just make things make a lot of sense.
And unpicking some of the things like Bohemian Grove and stuff like that, like, we didn't realize. I mean, obviously what you did was incredible and stuff like that, but what we didn't realize was it had been on the news. It had been on the news before that. Like, you know,
yeah. Someone else had tried to infiltrate and I think got arrested.
Yeah.
And there was this woman there called Mary who would protest every year. Yeah, left-wing activist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She was coming from it from a sensible position, which is essentially, look, they're lobbying, and they shouldn't be lobbying out the sight of people and stuff.
Which is 100% true. Yeah, absolutely. Self-selecting, secretive elites.
That's the real conspiracy behind it.
Yeah. People say that the Manhattan Project, you know, got a lot of backing for Bohemian Grove. I've never done my own research on that.
But basically what happens is that Bohemian Grove is almost like a sort of function centre. So when they're not having their parties, they hire out facilities in the same way that basically we need to go for a meeting, so we're going to this Premier Inn in Liverpool or whatever.
To Centre Parks or something.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that. Yeah. So it is true, but the reason that it was done there was simply because it was just an area where all these people could meet. It's nothing significant or sinister about the place itself. They didn't go there to get the energies or anything like that. They just did it because it was a place where they had enough seats.
It wasn't in the 2 weeks of hijinks either. It was a completely different time because they just sent everyone to for a holiday.
Right. Yeah, it's like, they've got their club in San Francisco. I've got to say, the one thing I feel really pleased about is I saw my cameraman, David Barker, from back in those days quite recently. I was giving a talk in Belfast, that's where he lives. And I said to him, like, David didn't go into Bohemian Grove. He was like, look, I'm not going to be filming in there, so I don't want to put myself at any risk. So he stayed outside while the rest of us went in. And I said to David, of all the adventures we did back then, the Ministerial Goats, the Flan, all of these kind of crazy adventures that we did together back then, the one that's almost entered like the realms of mythology is sneaking into Bohemian Grove with Alex Jones. And I got to say, I'm personally just very proud of the fact that that particular adventure that I undertook that night has become almost like, like Joseph Campbell's Heroes Journey.
It's amazing.
Like folklore.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to say lore.
Yeah, it's lore. And I feel I'm so glad that one of my stories became lore like that.
No, fantastic. Well, not just that, the man who stared at goats as well. Like, that's a fascinating story.
I think so. That was so much harder to make work. With Secret Rulers and them, it felt like everything we did was like golden. We didn't have to work that hard to make it great. Whereas the Ministerial Goats, it felt like the opposite was the case. We travel, 12 hours on a plane to get minutes of usable material. It's like a completely different experience. So my memories of doing the Ministerial Goats are a lot worse than my memories of doing Secret Rulers.
With regards to, do you think Albert Stubblebine did actually walk through walls? Do you think the guy Savelli did actually kill a goat?
Oh, no.
Right, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Well, that's fairly conclusive then.
Yeah. Albert Stubblebine said that, the reason why he thought he could walk through his wall is because the atom is made up mostly of space. And, the wall and the human body are made up mostly of atoms. But for me, the key word in that is mostly.
Mostly, yeah.
So no, I never, and in fact, in a way, that's a kind of disappointment for me that I never really, sort of believed that those paranormal powers could be real. Because in the psychopath test, I got drunk with my psychopath spotting powers. I went through a change. Same thing with them, when I'm getting chased by a Bilderberg group, I get paranoid. I become like a conspiracy theorist. So, I go through a sort of arc in those two books. But in the Ministerial Goats, I never really went through an arc because I never really believed it would be possible to kill a goat just by staring at it.
What about the remote viewing aspect of it? Do you think there's anything to that?
Well, people say, look, there's a lot of people out there who absolutely swear that there's something in it. And then there's a lot of other people who furiously reject the idea. I can't say I've ever done enough of my own personal research to come up with, the skeptical side of me, tends to believe the skeptics.
Yeah. Do you think it's more of like a cold reading type thing or something, perhaps?
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's an element to that, but also, I don't want to completely reject it because we've all had that experience. You're turning around and someone's staring at you.
Yeah.
We've all got that experience of, that kind of stuff, the kind of stuff that Rupert Sheldrake writes about.
Yeah.
So, so I can't say that I'm so certain in my skepticism that there isn't something going on there. Maybe.
Did you ever hear the remote viewing explanation for the Loch Ness Monster?
No, I know it was Ed Danes, right?
Yeah, it was Ed Danes. Yeah, he says that it's the ghost,
a dinosaur's ghost.
Yeah,
That's right, the ghost of the dinosaur. Yeah, that makes sense.
The conspiracy theorists know that is not true because dinosaurs are not real, apparently. So,
right.
But yeah.
Well, look, you guys, I think I need to go, partly because I need to retain enough energy to do a bit more work before I collapse.
No, that's been fantastic. That was actually our final question. But so thank you so much, John. It was just incredible. We're, as we say, huge fans. If you, everybody, go and listen to the two series of Thing Fell Apart. Look out for the tour, the Psychopath tour. It sounds like it's going to be fantastic. And very glad that you're feeling better. And just thank you so much for this. It's been incredible.
Thank you, guys. I thought that was really fun. It's always a bit like when I talk to Knowledge Fight. It's always really fun to talk about people who are so knowledgeable about this area, because I'm so interested in this area too. So yeah, it was an absolute delight. Thank you both.
And please check out our podcast as well. I think you might like the Bohemian Grove episode, certainly. So.
Oh, I will. And I also am interested in your Great Reset episode, so I'm gonna dig that out too.
Oh, please do, yeah. And we did one. We've done Pizzagate, and we've recently done chemtrails. We've got one that's coming out that we're particularly proud of. There was the UK's sort of Sandy Hook. I don't know whether you're aware of a chap called Richard D. Hall, and who claimed that the Manchester bombing was fake. He's currently going through a court.
No, I don't know about that.
Some dare call it conspiracy.